Boys and girls, welcome to episode 4 of Room 2250. I'm your host, Haider and Chris, along with my co-host,
Christopher McCarricker.
So Chris, on the first podcast, on the first episode, we had a question come in from a like future listener who said, "Is this podcast going to be about nerd culture and gaming?" Yeah. And do you remember what you said? We said no, of course
absolutely not. You know, this is going to be something more casual that appeal to everyone.
Yeah. So I guess we lied because today we have a very special guest. Please welcome DCS Associate Professor Steve Engels.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's Friday. I'm psyched for the weekend. How are you folks?
We're doing good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it was like a bit of a rough morning, but I think now, like the afternoon, we had some pizza. I think it's getting a bit better.
Yeah. I mean, we got midterms still, like you do too.
Yeah. So Steve, for those of you who don't know, who are you and like what do you do?
So I'm Steve Engels. I am one of the associate professors of teaching in the Department of Computer Science. In terms of what I do, most people here know me from the second year course I teach, which is CSC 258, and a few other people know about the fourth year course I teach, which is CSC 404, the video games course. But I also do a bunch of other things, second year summer course 299, research opportunity program, and teaching a first year course on video games for the first time in a few years.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something fairly new. I remember when I was in first year, we didn't have anything like that.
Usually it's a seminar course, and every department has to offer a few. And if the research faculty are interested in teaching them, then they get first crack.
Yeah.
But if an opportunity opens, then I get to teach it. So I haven't done it since 2013.
I think it's a good thing, too, because usually, at least for a first-year CS student, it's kind of just 108 and 408, nothing kind of that dips your toe into the cool parts of computer science.
Well, also, it's not just for computer science students. It's for all of arts and science. So I have people in the class who are in criminology, life science, humanities, some from Rotman, all over the place.
That's cool.
I can actually for next semester I can drop one of my I still have 100 level credits.
Yeah.
So I can drop I have some other like religion like course, so I can drop that and maybe take that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Who needs religion?
All right. So for housekeeping, we have like one bit of news, which is on the 31st of October, Halloween. The CSU is having a movie and costume night, and we're going to be giving out a few prizes.
What's the movie? Is that announced yet?
We haven't. I don't think we've chosen yet, but it has to be like something horror related.
Of course. But
like they want something that's horror and CS related, so I'm like, nothing.
Like
there's
Tron.
There's that one was it Pulse?
Which one's that?
I think it's the one where like the cell phones are kind of transmitting evil things.
Oh, I remember seeing that in high school. It's one of those horribly, like you laughed. It's one of those movies I think that you laughed.
Okay, maybe.
Could Unfriended work?
Unfriended? I don't know. I haven't.
That's the one where the whole thing takes place over chat windows.
Oh, that would be pretty cool actually.
Yeah. Is it good or is it like bad or is it fun bad?
It's kind of funny bad.
Okay.
It gets funnier with more people in the room.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Yeah. We'll definitely, we haven't chosen yet, but I think we'll put that into consideration.
Yeah.
But we are giving out prizes for best CS related costume, best prof costume.
What's a prof costume? Let's stop there.
It's like it's a professor.
Like a costume that the professor's wearing, or a costume of a professor.
I think we should have two different categories now. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think actually that's a really good idea, Chris. I gotta double check on that one. And then we're giving out top 5 best costumes, just general.
Right.
Which so a lot of prizes.
Yeah.
I don't know who's funding this. I definitely didn't want to sign off this. But
I won one of those ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I came dressed up as Mario and I got a prize.
Oh.
I think I've seen that picture actually before.
Here we go. Pulse. When their computer hacker friend accidentally channels a mysterious wireless signal, a group of co-eds rally to stop a terrifying evil from taking over the world.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Yep. Wes Craven. Nice.
Wes Craven. Okay.
Okay.
That has to be taken into consideration for sure.
All right. Okay. Any housekeeping from you, Chris?
No.
Okay. Everybody's good. So now we're gonna go into news, and we have a lot of news today.
Yeah.
So first bit of news: the varsity. I'm pretty sure everybody by now should have maybe heard about this in one way or another.
Yep.
So 2 years in the making. The UTSU has settled with Sandra Hudson. It's 11 days before the actual trial.
Yeah.
And she had to pay back a certain amount, but it's undisclosed.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of people giving hate to the ETSU. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. We don't know the conditions. We don't know the terms. Most of the union did vote yes. Only a few people voted no. Maybe there was a good reason. Like maybe there genuinely was that they can't disclose to us for.
I don't know, man. I feel like I don't want to like get too much into this, but
Yeah.
it's just like when you make a vote and they run on a platform and they don't.
Yeah.
It's like demand better. It's more like expect the same. It's just, do you pay attention to UTSU politics at all?
Nope.
Most people don't. And I think that's sometimes for the better.
Probably. But that's the only bit of varsity news that at least this week was important. But then the rest comes from, most of it's going to come from BBC. So Facebook wants 1 billion people in VR. And
That's never going to happen.
they're launching something called Oculus Go.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Which is going to be VR headset that starts at $199.
See, like, for most people buy like a phone is what I mean. They'll buy a phone. Some people will buy a laptop. Even that's kind of niche now, though. I can't imagine someone spending $200 if they're not a hobbyist for what genuinely is a hobbyist device. A billion they only hit 1 billion people on Facebook. What, like a year ago, 2 years ago, 3?
Mm.
There's no way. I mean, it'd be cool.
I mean, VR is one thing, right? But their Oculus device. I mean, $199. If it's not going to be something that you use all the time, how are you going to carry it with you?
Exactly.
I was just talking to Karan Singh this morning, and he showed me this add-on to your phone. It's kind of like cardboard, only it's basically just like it's almost like it makes it almost like those stereo viewers.
Okay.
Those old-time ones where you had like a couple lenses you looked into.
Is it the Google Cardboard? Is it that what it is?
Oh, no, it's something neat. It's just like it clips onto your phone in the middle.
Okay.
And it extends out 2 lenses that you look into.
Oh, wow.
So you don't have the actual box, and this thing folds up and tucks into your pocket.
That's really cool.
So it's basically VR that can come with you anywhere. And you don't need all this fancy equipment.
Yeah,
that is cool.
See, like stuff like that, it's like, I don't know. I'm not.
I mean, there are some fun uses for it too. Like, you can watch like Netflix and VR and stuff on your phone, but like, your phone just gets insanely hot after like an hour, so it's really hard to use. And also, you're watching it like 720p now. You need like a 4K screen first of all for this to be even remotely good. It's,
I think
it's early. It's in early stages, is what I think. So,
but our boy Mark Zuckerberg doesn't think so. And actually, so the bit of one news I want to attach to this is that so it was a virtual reality tour, right? And for promotion, and it was including Mark Zuckerberg in cartoon form, and they were touring like I guess America, including Puerto Rico. And so all you see is Mark with his like hands up and like smiles and like an absolutely destroyed Puerto Rico. It's just like
did he mention it?
Like they were trying to make sympathy, but it was just obviously a PR stunt.
Yeah.
And it just looks so bad. And then he made it like apology post like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anyone. I'm like,
in his defense, he probably didn't give the go ahead for that. It's probably a different marketing team that. I mean, that's kind of their one job is to not have PR nightmares. So, maybe consider hiring different people.
I just thought it was like, we're gonna go to this place that's destroyed. People's lives are gone.
That's crazy to me because there literally are people at Facebook. Their job is to not make a huge mistake like that. That's like their job, is to like make good videos that won't be like controversial. So I don't know how they messed that up that bad. But
no, there's so the next bit of news I have is in Australia, there was a person who had took his own life.
Right.
But in his phone, he had a unsent text that was his will essentially, and the court accepted it.
Yeah.
As his actual will.
That's fair, I think.
So all this stuff went to his like brother and nephew, but I didn't know that. I didn't think it would, because like usually like wills have to be signed off by like 2 people, at least in Canada.
Yeah, but I thought usually rule of thumb is they'll still try to respect the wishes of the person if there's proof that they wrote it.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess like this is the power of unsent text messages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So try not to send your texts if you want to have them hold up in a court of law. The rule of thumb right there.
Probably rule of thumb. In a bit of good news, Microsoft has finally given up on Windows 10 for mobile, which is.
I used to use the Windows Phone actually. In high
How
school.
did you like it?
Honestly, it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually really good UI.
We had a bunch.
Yeah.
So you guys both used it?
I didn't use it. They
I used
gave
Windows 10.
Windows and Microsoft and RIM and Google basically give us phones every so often so that we can develop stuff on their platforms. So when Windows phones first came out, they sent us about half a dozen of them, just so we could see what kind of things we could make on them.
Yeah.
Well, how did you find them?
They're fine.
They're fine.
The development environment is familiar. It's just, we couldn't come up with anything really compelling that hadn't already been done.
And the issue is too, like, iPhone and Google roughly same UI in a way. I mean, they both have their strengths and weaknesses, but kind of the same style of layout. Windows was vastly different. It was like a tiled thing, kind of like Windows 8, if you remember. At least I think so. I haven't seen their Windows 10 phones, so it wasn't even like you could just easily port your Android apps or your iPhone apps over. Kind of like what some companies do with their Android and iPhone apps. They're very similar. They couldn't do that. They'd have to like establish something entirely different with an entire kind of design perspective in mind. So what ended up happening was a lot of apps were kind of either half-assed or they just weren't there. So the unfortunate thing is you had a really cool UI, very original, but there wasn't any apps for it basically, which was unfortunate. But I guess that's the way it is sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the chief behind Windows 10 said it's no longer a focus, and he himself actually started using Android. So it's I
mean, they said they're bringing Edge over to mobile. Edge is the successor to Internet Explorer, which I have heard good things from actually with Edge. Though, from what I've heard, it's not really going to be Edge on the browser. It's just going to be Edge in name, with a different backend.
Fair enough. But anyways, that's what our Windows 10 news. It's from New Zealand. I'm sure maybe you guys probably heard about this, but the New Zealand Police Department. Apparently, there's only one police department there, but
really,
apparently it's just New Zealand Police. There isn't like. I thought there'd be like specific like Auckland police, but no, it's just New Zealand police. Their Twitter. So and I quote, "When we have to tell someone their family member has died in a crash."
Oh, I saw this.
And then with it, they've attached a GIF from The Office, which has Michael Scott, and like it just says on the bottom, "This is the worst." Now it's very obvious what they're trying to go for.
Yeah.
But like
But obviously, to some people, it seems very insensitive.
It's just like you're using do you not know where this is from? It's from a comedy show. It's Michael Scott. So it's very tone deaf. Yeah. And then they try to justify that like this is one of the hardest things cops have to do. And everybody's like, yes, we know.
No, for sure, yeah. But use a different. I mean, maybe a meme isn't the most appropriate way to tell people that.
Yeah.
At least, but it got them on the map. Now we know who New Zealand police is, I guess.
Yeah, no.
So I guess they did a little bit better than Facebook.
No, they got a lot of flack and they obviously took it down and apologized. But it was funny that it happened. But so now we're just gonna get into like a small bit of news. The United States of America is out of the FIFA World Cup after losing
to Trinidad.
Oh
Their B team. Trinidad was out. Do you know that? They were out. They would have, even if they won that game, which they did, they would not be in the World Cup. So they had nothing to lose or nothing to gain. And they brought their B team out. And they beat the entire A team of like the US.
Yeah,
all the US had to do was tie too. They couldn't tie against the B team of like the worst team in their division, basically.
This is what happens when you call football soccer. But no, no. I think the more interesting part of this is that Fox paid $400 million.
Yeah.
For the rights for the 2018 and 2022 World Cup, and now US is not even in one of them.
Yeah.
So, and ironically, this is the one that's going to be held in Russia. So I guess because no Americans are going to Russia this year. But yeah, that's sports. The Samsung CEO has resigned, and that's because of the company's been plagued with corruption and like bad management, but they still make a lot of money, which is ironic because usually you think bad management and corruption doesn't usually end up too well.
Well, like it could be middle management and lower management are really good.
It's possible, yeah.
It's not necessarily the CEO that's bringing the innovations to companies.
That's definitely true.
Yeah, and a lot of the corruption. I mean, if you have a lot of money, you can get away with a little bit of corruption because there's enough for everyone to take.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So last two bit of news from TechCrunch, AOL Messenger is shutting down after 20 years, which I thought on America Online, I thought that entire company was just gone.
I have to say AOL, it's so old. I was too young for it. So that's crazy that it's still around.
Yeah, it's 20 years old this year.
Yeah, these things happen. I mean, you guys aren't old enough to know ICQ, right?
No. It's before us.
Yeah, ICQ was the thing. It was the first one.
Oh,
was it like a messenger platform?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was. it was PC based. You had to install the client locally, and you had to remember your unique ID number in order to be able to know who you are and get on other people's lists.
Perfect.
Yep.
So if you lost that, you kind of had to restart.
Yeah. It's like you had to memorize everyone's phone numbers.
Yeah.
Oh my god. All right. Last bit is a bit of gaming news. So this is from Newsweek. So people are upset over Wolfenstein. Because
the most recent one?
The new one. Because now I don't really like to get political, but this is in 2017. People are upset because Wolfenstein is a video game that's based around killing Nazis, and people are upset because these are some of the tweets that are targeted towards it. It says, "You sound like you hate people that support Trump," and then it was like,
I feel like that almost sounds like a satire comment, doesn't it? That doesn't sound like a real comment.
no, it doesn't, but it was. I read that. I'm like, how is this? It's a game about killing Nazis.
Can you imagine Call of Duty, the new
World War II one.
Yeah, imagine that getting flack. Can you imagine that for depicting Nazis?
No, and somebody else was like, you're tapping into the leftist power fantasy. I'm like, of killing Nazis? That's like being in America fantasy for like years.
Yeah.
Well, you can't discriminate against these poor Nazis, They just...
What did they ever do wrong, right?
They're having it so rough these days.
No, that was like the one thing I read. I'm like, that's gotta be
surreal. That's actually surreal.
Yeah, I thought it was like a joke. I'm like, this game's been around forever now. Like it's like pioneered first-person shooting,
Yep.
and
there's some groups that you are still okay, going after in games.
yes,
I feel like it's crazy. Like 5 years ago, this would not even have been like on the Onion. You know what I mean?
Yep.
no,
Times change, I guess.
times change. That's a bit of news we have. So now we're gonna get into questions.
Yeah.
So first bit of question for you, Steve, is how do students get into research?
Well, okay, so not all students necessarily need to. So for anyone who's listening out there, if you're not getting into research, it's okay. But a lot of people want to take advantage of the fact that they're at U of T, because U of T is kind of this research powerhouse. And if you're here, you might as well find out what new interesting things are going to be coming out in technology in the future. And so out of all the different profs, like each of them has their own research area, and each of them is working on new things that are going to add to the state of the art. You just got to figure out which ones or which areas you're interested in. And once you figure out what areas you're interested in, then that narrows down the kind of profs you probably want to talk to. And then the only thing is to talk to them. Almost every prof has research going on. Usually that's done by some of their grad students, but they have opportunities for undergrads who want to work on something small. It's typically something that, prof is just curious to see if it'll work or not. And so you say, hi, my name is Haider. I'm a student who is in your class, and I'm really interested in the work that you're doing, and I wanted to do like a 494 independent project with you, hopefully in the areas of this, and this. I've got experience in this, and this. I think it could be a lot of fun, and I'd really be interested in working with you. And that's that.
I remember you mentioned the research opportunity program.
Yep.
How can undergrad students leverage that?
All right, so say you're not in fourth year, or you're not at the point where you can go after the 494s. There are a couple of things you can do after your first or second year. So they're labeled as research opportunity programs, or ROP, offered through arts and science. So anyone who's not in arts and science can't go after them.
Right.
And what happens is that these areas, they get posted in the winter, and all the different profs who are offering one of these research opportunity programs puts a little description online, and you can send in an application. Profs will get all these applications, decide how many people they want to take in, and those students will get to work with the prof over the summer, get course credit, and work on some researchy kind of task.
Okay, that's actually pretty cool. Because I know we get a lot of students come by in CSSU and always ask, how can I get involved in research? We get those, I think, a couple every week.
Yeah, it's like people are generally like speaking. They are interested,
especially first, second years. They're always curious,
eager.
Yeah. So this thing works all the time, and usually the people that I get, they're like, it's a ROP 299 for people who are just finishing first year, ROP 399 for people who are just finishing second year.
Okay.
And I know in the past I've had people work on my research on making video games for blind players, video games for seniors, and these days studies on video games that are meant to teach.
Yeah.
So educational game design.
This kind of ties into
question 2.
Yeah.
So for question 2 is what do you see like the role of gaming in education like in the next decade?
Okay. So one of the things that I've tried saying, and this might be a bit sensationalist, but it's just I want to see games replace all lectures and assignments.
Yeah.
Mostly
Me too.
because, yeah. Well, because every game teaches you stuff, no matter what. Like, even if it's not teaching you something out of a high school or university curriculum, you end up learning about things like, how to operate the controls,
Yeah.
strategies you can use, some of the backstory or some of the interesting characteristics of the players you're controlling or the players you're interacting with. So there's always things that games are teaching you so that you can play the game. And so the thought is, why can't we make some of these games teach things that are a little bit more, applicable to our studies, right? Where some of the skills that you learn have parallels to the things that you're trying to learn in class. And also games provide feedback, and the feedback is usually instantaneous. So it's not like you submit an assignment, you wait a week, and then you get an assignment back, and you've forgotten exactly what you were doing when you were making it. This one, it's like you do something, you get immediate feedback. You do it again, get immediate feedback. And it's not like you send in an assignment once, and then that's it. You can redo a level as many times as you want until you get it right. Right? And so you can try new strategies, you can try new things until you figure out something that allows you to get past it. And even if you get past it, you can go back and do it again if you want to 3-star the level, right? So there's a lot of stuff that you could do with games that just don't happen these days. We'd love to be able to, but if we can make a game that's effective at helping introduce people to a concept and then giving them feedback on how they can improve their performance, then yeah, we could replace all of our classes and lectures with it.
I guess this also ties into, you were saying, kind of help with research, with gaming research involving people who are blind as well as seniors too.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the same kind of logic.
Yeah, the seniors one is because we want to help people want to help people maintain their cognitive abilities.
Right.
So that things like driving simulators can help seniors maintain their abilities so that they're not limited or they don't lose their license.
Yeah.
As soon as you lose your license, then that has a big effect on your ability to get around, and that affects your, your perception of the world.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so everything, like all games teach you something anyway. So I'm just trying to figure out how to channel that stuff now into something that we need to learn.
Yeah.
Do you think that we'll be able to see something like that being implemented in like the next, like obviously like not the near future. I wouldn't say not even the next decade, but like, do you have any?
It could be the next decade.
Well, we already see games in our classes anyway, right? If you think about it, classes are really like there's a certain gamification to it. Like what kind of goals you have. Your overall goal to pass the level is that you have to get a certain mark in the class.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? Well, you got these little sub goals that you need to do, and these things kind of space them out. And they're spaced out in such a way that you kind of slowly increment your skills. You have little bosses, like your midterms, where your boss is supposed to be a way of testing all the skills that you've learned up to that point, and you have to pass the boss in order to be able to get to the next part. There are those parallels.
You make school sound a lot more interesting than it is sometimes.
I'm just saying that we forget sometimes that this gamification pervades our everyday life in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And one of the examples I always like to point to are things like Air Miles cards, which have like points, and they got goals, and they got behaviors that they're trying to teach you to do, and
spend more.
Yeah. And so you play the game and you change your behavior in order to try to navigate through the rules that it sets out for you, and you try to hit these points where you can get little rewards. There's games everywhere, whether we're aware of them or not.
Yeah. Okay. So for question 3, so you before we get like too into it, we'll say like you co-started an event called Level Up Showcase.
Yep.
So what is that?
It started off actually here at U of T only, where upstairs in room 5250, we had my 404 video game course, the finer projects. We put them on display there, and we invited people to come by. We actually got people who just, walked in, other students at U of T just came in and they played the games, and they actually got a chance to evaluate the games and say what they thought. So their opinions went towards the final marks in the course. And so this was just kind of a thing we hosted. Every year people had to get their final marks from whoever played their game. And then we paired up our course with OCAD so that their artists and our programmers worked together to make the games. And so we did the same thing, but we didn't want to host it here. So we hosted it just at, I think, the TIFF Lightbox.
Okay.
That's
Nice.
Yeah.
really cool.
Oh, it was just built. They didn't have anyone using it, and they wanted to encourage people, so they allowed us to use their space for free. So we brought our games there, and we had a friend out at UIT who brought their students' games out, and we had a little party, and it was huge and packed. And we had a bunch of people from industry come in too, so it was kind of a neat thing. So we said, okay, this is great. Let's make it bigger. And so we went from having 3 schools together to having 6 schools, and then 12, and then 15, and now it's something like 17. Like basically any program that has a video game course or video game students, they have students that are showing their games at this showcase event. And so now we're down at the Design Exchange. That's downtown at like Wellington and Bay. We get all these big industry sponsors to come and help fund the event. We have about 88 teams from 17 different schools. We get all this media coverage. So I think last year I was on breakfast television for a little bit promoting the event.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of grown a lot faster and a lot bigger than I ever thought it would. It was because it was just a small little thing upstairs, at the time that it started.
Do you see it like continually growing?
Oh, I think at this point we've managed to reach a certain saturation. The space is just big enough to house all of these, like the 90 or so projects. We've run out of universities to expand to. Like we have every program, even some schools that don't have gaming programs but have gaming clubs have sent some of their students to this event.
That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just been one of those things. It's like a black hole that just keeps sucking people in. And now we're at this critical mass. So it's about the right size. Like we just want to maintain it and make sure that it stays good.
Have you seen from Level Up Studio Showcase, a higher interest from students trying to get into game development?
Yeah, most of what we're trying to do is try to get more awareness for the outside world of what we're doing. Yeah. We can sometimes be a little cut off from people. And even though I try as much as I can to bring industry people into U of T and, into computer science, it's events like this that really, they catch people's attention. And so what we wanted to do was to say, look, here's all these people who are graduating, the projects they're working on are super cool. If you're in the game industry and you're looking to hire people, come here.
Yeah.
It's wanted to be like a one-stop shopping area for hiring some of our graduates and taking them into the industry.
No, definitely. Okay, so you said that it started off from your room upstairs, and now it's like you're taking up Bay and Wellington.
Yeah.
So where do you want to see it go from here?
These days, there's a skill that's needed in order to take an event and grow it. But then there's a different set of skills to take an event that's grown and make it polished.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are right now. We've grown to the point where we've pretty much taken every college and university program we can and made sure they're showing up somewhere. But now we're trying to embrace new technologies and trying to make sure we're showing those things off well. So a lot of VR games last year.
Yeah.
Tons. And VR games are hard to show, and we're trying to figure out how to become not just good profs, and good mentors, but also event organizers and, how do we do a good floor show, So that's the stuff we're trying to figure out right now.
I guess that's cool because, it's not an opportunity that every prof gets to have, I guess.
Yeah, or the students too.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you finish your course, you hand in your assignments, and that's it. But for this one, it's okay, your last assignment is to come down here and show off the stuff to the world, knowing that they are going to contribute to your final mark.
Which is cool, yeah, because there's often for a lot of classes, especially in your first few years in CS, and sometimes even third and fourth years, there's kind of a disconnect where you're like, I'm doing this, but kind of what am I doing with it, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to see stuff like that. I think I wish almost more courses had kind of some aspect like that.
Well, it's one of the things, every prof's got a different perspective on what they like or what their priorities are.
Yeah.
And for me, a big thing I want to do is to make sure that the stuff that you do in my class, it gets, you get to see the impact on how this could actually work in the real world. Right? Because, you're not going to be here forever. At some point, you have to go out there. So if I can facilitate that or just, thrust people into the thick of things, then, at least you get a chance to see it before you have to go out into the real world for reals.
Yeah.
I think that's always a concern too not especially for CS students, but for CS students, they're always worried about kind of how do I start, how do I leave my first kind of little impression.
I just want to add one more, Toronto has a good indie scene.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, one of the games I played like 2 years ago that really like stuck out was like Guacamelee.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I forgot.
Drinkbox.
Drinkbox. And I really, I played that game when I was playing on my Vita. I wasn't expecting high things from it, but like I'm like, whoa, this is
That's
good.
considered a classic, yeah.
Is it good? And then like I played Severed, so like Toronto has like a pretty good indie scene. I know there are like a few other companies. The Yukon
Yukon Games. So Drinkbox, Big Viking, Capybara Games.
Yeah.
And Game Loft.
Game Loft's from Toronto?
They have a Toronto. They have a Toronto studio. I mean, yeah, they're based largely in France.
Same with Ubisoft. Now we mentioned it. Ubisoft has a pretty big Toronto office.
Yeah, when we're talking about indies though, that's why.
Yeah.
That's right.
And there's also like Arcadium and
There's big ones.
And if you get like further out, then you get to things.
If you go to Montreal, then you have Square Enix, and then you have like Assassin's Creed and like
Yeah.
you know, the
you
big
have A2M, and you know they've even EA like Zynga has an office in Toronto.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
That's great. That's great because usually I know like a lot of people like at least earlier when I was like maybe in high school I'm like there's enough stuff that happens in Toronto for me to like I just show up for like Yu-Gi-Oh conventions and that's about it. Like now like you know like we have like a decent. I know we started recently having Comic-Con, but then now like Level Up. Do you guys open up Level Up Showcase to the public?
Yep. We want to make sure that everyone just comes in and sees what we can do.
Yeah.
So hold on. So when is it this year?
So it's going to be April 4th. Basically, it's like the last day of class.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, if it's April 5th, I can't make my class present.
We should have a live Room 2250 podcast.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So no, but it's good for that. Like Toronto does have a nice indie scene.
Yeah.
And yeah, Ubisoft kind of came in and they are like a giant studio. So I know that's like that changed the dynamic a little bit, but we still had a lot of like really small little studios, you know, a handful of people and hundreds of them. So, you know, Toronto was really great for that kind of community.
Yeah, Ubisoft walked in, it's like, how can I add macro transactions to all these games? No. From there, we're going to move on to like the fourth question. A little bit of change. We're going to go back to
Academia.
Yep.
So, you know, you're currently pursuing your PhD at OISE.
Yep.
Yeah. So, instead of being in the field, so what keeps you in academia?
Well, okay, so I guess there's a couple answers to that one. The first one was that when I first started here, like as teaching faculty, the main thing wasn't that I needed to do a lot of research. The main thing was delivering courses. You know, we had to make sure we were good at being able to deliver like first, second, third year content. And yeah, the research was still of an interest, but it was always going to be sort of a secondary thing. But longer you're here, you know, the more, you know, 258 becomes comfortable, and the more kind of side things tend to pop up. And so, like even just before this, I had a meeting with people from Toronto Rehab because they'd like to collaborate with me on making games that can help make their stroke rehab therapies more engaging. It's neat stuff, right? Like these things just come. And so you eventually start to develop a little bit of interest. And after doing grad school a long time ago, I missed some of it and I get a chance to get back into it in some ways. So all of us, like research faculty definitely have a lot of research interest, but even the teaching faculty do. And I realized, you know, I never actually finished my PhD. Like I got accepted into the program, but took the job here and thought, all right, you know what, I'm doing all this research on the side anyway. I might as well get some credit for it.
Okay.
So applied for the PhD program. So basically the work I'm still doing, the stuff I was doing before anyway, is now going towards a thesis, as opposed to just being stuff that goes off into the void.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yep, so OISE was because, I mean, I've been teaching here for a while, and the games that I've been making, one's for seniors and for blind people, you know, they've been great. But the educational ones are a challenge, right? Because it's really tough to make a game that's educational and doesn't either lose the educational value or seem like a gamified worksheet. Yeah, so I figured I got a supervisor up there who's willing to watch over me as I do my work, and in a few years I'll be Dr. Engels.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, that's, you know, and for that reason alone I would do it.
Are you gonna start making your students have to refer to you as a doctor?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
You can either call me Dr. Engels or just Doctor.
there's a lot of teaching faculty who are actually doctors that you wouldn't have thought. It's like Francois Pitt.
What?
Okay.
He's Dr. Pitt.
Oh no.
Oh yeah,
I've
you
I
haven't
feel
been-
so bad.
I've never
I
called him
know.
that.
I didn't
You've
call
been
him
so
that.
disrespectful all this time.
I think he tries to keep it casual
It
though.
was too late now.
I guess it's stuck. Yeah.
I mean, we're all pretty casual here, right?
Yeah,
I
which is
I
nice.
remember when I came from engineering originally, and there you have to be very respectful.
Yeah.
And you would never be able to call them like Francois. You'd have to say like, "Hello, Dr. Pitt. How are you doing today?" I know, right? You should call him Dr. Pitt next time you see him. Everyone who's listening to this right now needs to call Francois Pitt Doctor.
I always try to make sure I say honorifics in emails, especially if I need to do an assignment.
Yeah.
I have to hand it in late. It's always hello professor or hello doctor, whoever.
Like I'd like to keep Professor, but like I'm pretty sure I said Mr. Pitt or something. Oh, Professor Pitt.
It should be Doctor Professor.
No, Doctor Professor. I actually want to like because we brought this up a few times, but like it didn't hit me now. You said making games or like researching my games for the like blind. How like where do they get their feedback from? Because like 90% of games, your feedback is visually, I guess, like
Yeah.
minus a few games like racing games where you have feedback even like from the joystick. But
It's auditory too. So the person who collaborated with me on this was Daniel Zingaro, who's one of the teaching faculty out at Mississauga right now. And being a blind member of our faculty, he was complaining about how when he was growing up, there weren't a lot of games that were accessible to him. Like he really enjoyed playing them, but he'd play Mario by pressing the button that would move him, waiting for a little bit, and then pressing the jump at the point where he knew he had to press jump in order to not die. So he would basically listen to things, and every time he heard like the death sound, he realized, okay, well now I need to do that differently.
Right.
And so that's how he learned how to play through Mario.
That's really cool.
It's cool, but it's also it's kind of it's
not
we should be able to do better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we were exploring, like looking at all the different things that we had available to us now in order to try to make games, like video games for people with no video. So we experimented, we made a bunch of different kinds. We made one where it's like 3D navigation. You know, you use a controller in order to explore this world, but all the objects in the world are saying their name over and over again. Like, so the table would be saying like table, and every time you go close, you can navigate through the environment by making sure with a stereo sound you're keeping yourself like away from all the bad obstacles. So things like that. Like we would make those kinds of games.
wow.
Yeah.
I know there's also some like text kind of based games that are pretty
Oh, yeah.
big. I remember seeing one that was like a Star Trek oriented, like you controlled the Enterprise, but it was all through audio, and it was like a very functional game. Like you could shoot, you could battle, you could kind of be like the perfect captain.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's text-based games have definitely been out there for a bit.
But you know, it's what more can we do?
We want to try to unlock, the wide space of games that people with vision can access, and try to see if we can create parallels.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the people who was on this team that was making this stuff made a horror game. Someone else made puzzle games. Someone else made a racing game. And so it was great. Yeah. So yeah, I guess you were asking me about why I decided to stay in academia and not go out into the real world.
Yeah.
I had my taste of the real world. It was great and fine, but I mean, you're always working on someone else's project. You had 9 to 5 hours. You had to always be and there was some where I had to come in wearing shirt and tie and
Oh,
I mean, yeah, it was terrible. Here, the nice thing is, well, I like teaching for one thing. There's something that's satisfying and altruistic about it, being able to help people and pass on knowledge, help people get jobs and help people just learn things. The social interaction is kind of nice. I like that I'm actually interacting with other humans instead of just my computer all the time. And I guess, yeah, the opportunity to work on things, and to see new and interesting technology pass through all the time. Like people from Toronto Rehab wanting to come by and collaborate. What else is I'm working with the University of Central Asia in Kyrgyzstan,
Okay.
helping the Aga Khan Foundation set up a completely new university in the middle of Kyrgyzstan.
Wow.
that's
With
cool.
with a computer science, basically it's a computer science based university program, and we're helping furnish them with some of our materials to give them a U of T level education. That stuff's
Yeah, you wouldn't do that in the field.
I've gotten a chance to work with the ROM to make video games and other sort of tech-based aspects of their existing exhibits. I've had a chance to work with local game companies, some startups. I'm currently also working with this startup that's basically making like GarageBand in the cloud. So we're working on helping them use technology in order to implement new ways of collaborating on music projects.
Okay. You know, it's funny that you say that, because I think a lot of students kind of have this view of academia and kind of being a professor as being kind of cold and stale and boring. I think a lot of people miss the interesting opportunities that it opens up.
So what's it like being a professor that just tortures students?
I know. I mean, I get it, right? Because we are sort of the gatekeepers for moving on. Like, we are the boss, right? And any boss at any level, I mean, you don't have like happy, like skippy feelings towards them all the time.
Yeah.
But I guess there's all the other things that we're supposed to do. Like, U of T is not just a place where people get their degree. I mean, it's supposed to be a place where you learn, but also it's a place where new things are being developed. Like, all the stuff that you see in the consumer market, you know, starts off here 20 years earlier as like a concept that we work on and hone.
Yeah.
Right? And then places like Apple will take our ideas and make products out of them.
But thanks, Apple.
Yeah. Well, you know, we are like an R&D center for the world, right? So being able to be part of this is great, you know, and being able to kind of work on new exciting areas of research that I find, you know, or that I think is interesting from one day to the next is cool.
Yeah.
So like these days, I'm working on a bunch of VR stuff just to see what can be done with it.
Yeah. It's solid.
That sounds really fun, actually.
I think now you want me to like
maybe I should be a professor.
Maybe a professor of accounting. I'm sure there's a lot of fun there.
It is a good job. It's a good place to work. You know, it's always challenging. You never have to worry about rotating jobs every 2 years to keep yourself fresh. It's like you have to stay fresh all the time, but it's not a chore.
Yeah. I guess you answered like the second part of this question as well, which was why should students go into academia instead of the field?
Because it sounds really fun, actually.
Because it sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean it is fun, but it's not for everyone. There's a lot of people who at the end of 4 years are like, just get me out of this place, right? Like, A, I'm tired of being poor. B, I want to deal with I want to do some like real stuff. I've got all these ideas and stuff that I want to do. You know, I'm ready for the next step. You know, I'm tired of eating residence food. You know, whatever reasons you have. Like, people just want to go. And it's not that there's people who necessarily want to stay because, oh my gosh, I can't leave like the womb of university. It's more like, you know, like I had a chance to go and try a bunch of other things and then decide, you know what, I actually kind of like, you know, the freedom and the ability to explore and that stuff. And some people don't need that. Some people want the complete opposite. I just want a place to give me money to do some basic task so I can check in at 9, check out at 5.
And do my own thing.
And do my own thing.
Yeah.
You know? And everyone lies on the spectrum somewhere along there. Some people have their own ideas where they want to be able to just make something and make money off of it. Like, you don't go into academia because you want to make tons of money. You go in because, you know, you get a chance to do a job where they let you sort of stretch your mental muscles and, you know, see what kind of things you can do. Yeah.
That's solid.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the final question. So, this is we're debating if we should put this question on, but we decided to keep it on. So, do you think that video games are like an art form? And the reason I asked this because I mean at least 10 years ago, I remember I had this debate in high school, and then people were like, at least especially teachers were like, no, absolutely not. Only paintings and music and theater. Not some of them were not even movies or only black and white movies. I'm like, I don't know.
But the role of video games has changed so much. As you're saying now, you can use it for rehabilitation. You can use it for education.
Yep. Okay. So this has been a hotly debated topic for a while, and I think there was this big thing with Roger Ebert, you know, when he was pronouncing them as not being an art form, and then eventually I think he kind of came around and changed his mind.
Yeah.
I guess the answer to our video games an art form is if other things which are currently considered to be art forms are, you know, part of that category, then video games are too. So just like things like movies, right? So people always say almost like there's a difference between movies and film, right? Where film is art and movies are like entertainment. You know, and there's a blurred line between where you stop being a movie, you start being a film, right? Yeah. There's a lot of games that are purely because the game companies need to make money, so they make something that is incredibly fun, and so sells a lot of copies.
Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the other side, there's a lot of games that people don't know about, like especially the really indie ones, the ones where no one has any intention of making money off of them. It's just to express something. So one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm teaching, as I said, I was teaching a first-year video game course, and the theme for that one is called Games for Change. And you can actually go to gamesforchange.org and see the kinds of things they do there. Those ones, it's all about creating almost like an interactive experience that can engage people way more than a movie can, and teach people about, not necessarily, again, like education from like a school point of view, but teach people about different perspectives, enact some kind of social change, just try to help widen people's perspectives, right? And if that's not what art does, then I don't know what it is, right? So these games, like things like Papers, Please.
Yeah, that was a solid
heavy game.
Right? Heavy Game is supposed to teach you all the different things that happen when people, what would it be like to actually, to cross the border, and like how harrowing that can be, what it's like to have the lives of these people in your hands, not just the responsibility of letting the right people through, but also what happens if you don't let the right people through.
Yeah.
There was this game called That Dragon Cancer, where it was like you play it and it's peppered with anecdotes of people whose kids have gotten cancer. That's not from perspective of people with it, but people who have kids with cancer, and what it's like to kind of watch this disease take over people's bodies. These, and then like they don't have to be like super serious messages. They can be things like journey or flower or flow, or things that are beautiful to look at and really stimulating to play.
Yeah.
And so all the different things that people consider to be art. Like there are areas where people consider like high art and low art, and you can debate those things. But I mean, if those all belong or can be part of this artistic space, then so can games.
This kind of conversation reminds me of, I guess, it happened in the 80s and 90s, and it still kind of happens a little bit, where they were saying, can a graphic novel be literature? People were debating, can it be, can it not be? It's frenzy of that.
Or even Andy Warhol's paintings, right? Like he painted a giant can of soup, and there was all these people saying, like, is this art? Or he took a comic panel and he blew it up, so that you could see like the little stippling like pixels were like the size of frisbees, and is this thing art? And it's like, well, it's interesting when you frame it in this point of view and you let people look at it in this way, like something people are thinking and it's provoking thought. It may not be as like creative in terms of like making something out of nothing, but are you doing the things that art is meant to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like at least for modern art, there's like a bit of a fine line. I think if anybody wants to, they can watch H3H3's video about modern art, and because at least for me, like there's some things about modern art I'm just like, no, I don't get it.
See,
and I feel like that's definitely I mean, I'm sure like Robert was like coming from the same thing, because I just don't get it, and like that's maybe because
it could also just be that you're seeing the worst of what
modern art
has to offer.
Well, I don't know. There's like one where like somebody just threw like a hot dog sandwich on the floor. Like, is this art?
It's like let's go back to this video game debate kind of conversation. If the only thing people ever saw was Call of Duty, they'd be like video games aren't art. You know what I mean? So
it's definitely a fair point. I think like the one you mentioned it actually, Journey. Journey definitely kind of changed the way I looked at, because there's nothing, you don't say anything. You don't you interact, and I mean like the slightest, you barely interact with somebody else in the game, but by the time the game ends, you don't know this person, you don't know anything about them, but you know that you completed this journey with them, and it's super cool. It's like it's like a 3-hour sit down. And that was like an indie. They were also I mean, I'm sure a lot of you played like blockbuster games that also kind of I think The Last of Us and both Red Dead Redemption both really made me raise some questions about, at least for myself, and that was when I'm like, I guess even though these were blockbuster games, I'm like, I would consider these more or less art. They definitely made me think.
Yeah, and I mean things like Last of Us, they actually had someone whose entire task was narrative. To create a story arc that goes from beginning to end, where he was doing things like making sure there was a collection of well, every female character in that was a strong archetype.
Yeah.
You know, so that there was none of the stereotypical female characters in that one.
Exactly.
And that's something that people realize afterwards, like, oh wow, I didn't actually notice that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
actually,
that's true.
there's something happening. And there's also the development arc, you know, of the main characters and how they progress. And his entire job was to make sure that the game, yeah, it had these interactive elements, but that there was story and narrative development and everything you'd want from a piece of
Yeah.
It's like playing through those games. It was like I'd rather just like
watch them
I'm
over.
playing it just to get to that cutscene because I want to see the character. And like, but like I will say though, like that game is like kind of special because it's like the little moments as well, and they're like in the actual gameplay that
And they were very purposely
they're
added.
very purposely. Nothing was like garbage. So
Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to say. Like things like Call of Duty, right? Like is Saving Private Ryan considered to be art?
Yeah, that's a good question.
for I mean certain people, I'd say yeah.
Some people consider it to be more of like a simulation or, you know, like a documentary. Some people consider it to be more of just entertainment value. I mean, heck, it's got like Vin Diesel in it. You know, but at some point you say like, well, you know, there's creativity involved. You know, the way you put this together. You know, the way you're trying to evoke emotions from people. You know, there's something in there. But it's also directed by Steven Spielberg, so people are likely to dismiss it as just being
This is not art.
entertainment. It's right. It goes all over, right? There's So like Call of Duty, it's hard to say. I mean, the way it involves a lot of artistic resources in terms of people creating the characters and the environments and the story and even like this level progression. Like it's kind of like an architecture feel to it in terms of being able to make it clear what it is you're supposed to do and how to navigate through it.
Some amazing cutscenes. Like I mean, like when I mean cutscenes, I mean like set pieces that kind of happen. I'm like ooh,
Right. So at some point, you know, how is that starting to become different from a movie?
exactly. Yeah.
Right. Or if you made like an animated movie, how is that different?
Yeah.
Except that the animated movie, you don't interact with it. Right. Whereas, so I think it's just that when you think games, people are thinking like, oh, well, like I'm playing something. And so therefore there's no, like I'm more involved, whereas art is a little bit more passive. Like I need to have someone create something for me and I just enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's almost kind of crazy that I think just to kind of put a whole blanket of concept on across a whole medium. You know, imagine saying all TV is or isn't art. It just seems crazy for people to say video games can't be art. I don't know.
Well, saying that TV isn't art is a lot more popular than saying movies aren't art.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
It is.
Right.
It is definitely more popular.
Yeah, because the idea is like you're generating more of it, and it's, I don't know, like it's hard to say. I don't know why are movies considered to be art, but TV is not. You know, and games, I think there's people look at things like Monopoly or like, you know, checkers or hopscotch, and they say like, well, games aren't art. It's just, you know, this cultural phenomenon that people do. It's like, it's more of a custom or a behavior.
Yeah.
Maybe it comes from like I think it comes from like history as well. Like theater and like music definitely has like a long and like obviously like.
But it used to just be entertainment.
Yeah.
I think theater, it wasn't even always considered art.
Yeah. No, it's.
Yep. So that's why I think, you know, all these parallels, people draw a lot of parallels between movies and games. Say like games are basically like movies, just more interaction, especially these days with the production value in games. It's hard to say that there's a huge difference between what you would see in a game, like the cutscenes and the things you can interact with, and what you'd see in an animated CG movie.
Yeah.
$70 million budgets. Yeah, like big budget.
Some games like have crazy budgets now.
No,
actually,
they do. I mean, to be fair, a lot of them are just marketing. But if you just
Yeah.
look at, so like if you look at the development costs, like they still run up the figures pretty high.
Yeah.
Now, my second part of this question was like, what game like kind of stands out, like, you know, for you that kind of like talks about this notion? Because for me, like I already mentioned, it was like, you know, like Journey and then The Last of Us. Even though these are recent, I mean, I guess from my childhood, I didn't really pay attention to this stuff. But like Kingdom Hearts stands out. But I don't know. That was definitely like a blockbuster. It was like just Disney, like X Square Enix. But nonetheless, like what like from your examples, I think me and Chris might have like similar thoughts.
Opinions,
but
yeah.
you know, you more or less have seen like I guess games progress.
A lot of games.
Yeah.
From the beginning. I mean, the very first video games, like they tend to coincide with about the time that I was born. You know, so I grew up with like Donkey Kong and like the really basic 8-bit stuff that you play on the Atari.
The real art. The real games.
Okay, if I'm talking about art, the one that I would urge people to check out, and I showed this to all of my video game classes, is this game called Passage. Passage. You can just download it for free. It's a tiny little thing. You install it, you run it, and you play it, and you kind of don't know what it was that you just played at the end. And I play it with my first year class, and we just discuss it, just say like, so what just happened? You know, that was a good example of something that's very short, and it gives you this feeling of like, okay, you know, I feel different now that I've played this. Even though I don't quite know what it was that I played. In terms of the things that I find, are you talking about games that I find memorable? From over the years?
Both actually. Like, would games that you found like art, or like games that that are memorable?
So the ones that I thought, I guess, over the years there were just a lot of, there was a lot of really interesting ones that I played. Like when I was young, it was all the typical ones, you know, like the Mario, like the original Mario Brothers, not the Super Mario with like little mushrooms and
None of that 3D stuff.
No, not even that. I mean, like, even the one that people think of when it comes to rescuing the princess from the
You're
castle.
talking about the one with Mario and Luigi.
At the very beginning, where it was just a bunch of pipes and, you know, there was, so there's some old stuff that I remember seeing. Like, even Donkey Kong, where Mario's, like, the bad guy, because, you know, he was trying to go and capture Donkey Kong and put him in a cage. So there was all that stuff growing up. I mean, and there was a bunch of really interesting games, you know, like I played things like Ultima 4. I played a bunch of really like bad games too, like Home Alone the game. You know, whatever I could get from my cousin after he like illegally burned these things. But the ones I do remember were the King's Quest games when I was growing up. Those were ones where like it was maneuvering through like a 2.5D level, and you're trying to collect a bunch of items and solve a bunch of little puzzles. And they made like King's Quest 2, King's Quest 3, Space Quest, Police Quest, Heroes Quest. You know, there's a whole series of games that was really popular in like the early 90s.
Okay.
Like getting later, I guess, there were some. I played a lot of the rhythm games that came before Guitar Hero ever started up, like Amplitude and Frequency. I played. Oh gosh. Oh, there's so many of these little things trying to think about. Like I played Last of Us. I played, I guess more recently, I played like Horizon Zero Dawn. You know, like things like that. Yeah. The one that I remember the most that I felt so compelled and drawn to was Katamari. Katamari Damacy. It is a weird game.
Yeah,
it's like one of those, like, how do you even describe it?
No, you're just moving.
You're a ball.
Yeah.
I describe the mechanic as like, you know what, it's like snowball mechanic. Right? You're rolling the sting, trying to make the ball bigger, but it's everything else. It's like the bizarre music. It's like the weird
that big like
animation style. And like the dialogue that they write is just so strange. Like you're wondering what they were smoking at the time they write this.
So Japanese.
It's so bizarre, but it's also a very simple game mechanic, and it's compelling, and it's, you know, almost like mindless, but also kind of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know why that game keeps bringing me back.
Yeah. Okay. How about yourself, Chris?
For me, I would say like the first game I ever played that I was like, this is art, was when I was probably in high school and I was playing Ico.
Okay.
And it's one of those games where, I mean, it almost didn't feel like a game. Like it's not a game in a way, but it is a game, and it was just so different than anything I played. And I think more recently, one of the games that's really been sticking out with me is I've been playing a lot of this game called Dwarf Fortress, and it's like a text-based game, but it's kind of made by these two like mathematicians, and the entire idea of the game is to kind of simulate an entire reality. So it has all these crazy mechanics. Probably the most detailed procedural generation you'll ever see in a game ever. So it's just really cool to see like what these two mathematicians' interpretation of how life kind of grows and what happens with life, kind of how that works. Wow. And it almost ends up being this, almost like this little museum where you can play it, you can interact with it, but you can also just see, how did my world grow? What happened to all the characters in it? And there's just so much to it that I've just I don't know. I come back to it every, at least once a year to check it out, and it's just such a different experience, I think, than you'll find from most games.
It is kind of weird in my position right now, having seen all these waves and like generations of games that people will never even know about. It's hard sometimes to talk about. Yeah, I mean, it's put me in a unique position where I never started off this job thinking I was going to be like a video game prof, right? It was just one of those things that happened. You know, students came, said that they wanted to make some games and get course credit. So I said, all right, I'll make a course. And like 10 years later, it's kind of dominated my life. But yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff go by over the years. Like there was a whole time when I was playing a bunch of Olympics-based games because that was the thing. You know, it took 4 years to develop one of these things, so they would make games that coincided with the Olympics so you could play the events. You know, a lot of things that tied into weird IP at the time. Like, yeah, playing like the Home Alone, the game. You know, like playing Goonies in the arcades when I was growing up. Like the arcade version. It was a really good game. Goonies.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was tons of. It was actually really, really good.
It's hard to find games that are tied with like other IP that like
I
are
know.
good.
I mean, a lot of them are
It's
lost.
surprising. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a they had a text-based game based around it, which is one of the most oppressively, frustratingly difficult games. Just to figure out like, what is it you want me to do? Like, are you serious? I can't. How would I have thought of that?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so just seeing all these different games come through, and yeah, trying to teach our students about all the stuff which, you know, sometimes you can only get from like years and years of history is challenging. But I'm glad I'm glad to know that all those years of playing video games growing up has led to something useful now.
Yeah, take that long.
Yeah. See, Dad, you thought that I wasn't going to amount to anything for taking video games. Now look at me.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. Chris, do you have any other questions?
I don't.
There is actually a question from a listener. You're actually the first guest.
That's actually had a proper question.
That's a proper
He's
question.
listening right now and is asking a question at the moment.
Well, no, it's like no.
We put up that you're gonna be a guest about a week before,
Yeah.
and then we say, if you want to ask an anonymous question.
Or like I just go around asking. So
Yeah.
I'm
somebody.
a little scared, but okay.
No. It's somebody asked. How do you like apart from like work? How do you manage everything you do outside? Like, how do you find that work-life balance?
Okay, well, yeah, no, that's tough. A lot of us, like, it's hard to know because, you know, we try to hide this, but a lot of us are definitely like overwhelmed with all the stuff that we have to do. Most people only see us in terms of their classes, and so I think people sometimes imagine that as soon as we leave the classroom, we sort of like blink out of existence and reappear at the beginning of the next class, you know. But I find it is challenging to do all the things that we are ultimately responsible for, all the things that we would like to do because they have personal interest, all the things that we'd like to do because they would kind of help make our world and, you know, computer science better, and then go home and try to be like a good, you know, friend, spouse, you know, father, child, you know, like all those things that you try to do at home. And not to mention things like staying in shape and eating well and making sure you sleep. And
That's bottom of the list.
yeah. Well, what they say is that, like, it is at the beginning, like when you first start working especially, there's a lot of extra time. You know, like you make things work and it's easy. The longer you go, the more things get a little bit tougher in terms of extra obligations because you become more indispensable to your company, you become, you know, more knowledgeable, and so therefore a lot more stuff ends up on your plate. And you also take on a lot more responsibilities like personally. You know, so things like getting married, having kids, you know, taking care of your parents, that's a tough one. The only thing I guess is that, like, as you get older, you start to realize that everything that was tough for you before is more manageable. And anyone who's in fourth year knows this, right? You look back at first year. First year was so tough, right? Oh my God, there were so many things I had to learn. There's, oh my gosh, I didn't know how I was going to manage all my classes. And you look back in second year and you're like, what? That was so easy. That was like a tutorial level.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And likewise, you know, people who are in 258 right now. I mean, I know it's tough. Sorry, anyone who's taking 258, I know it's tough. But then when you get into like third year and fourth year, it's like, okay, you know what? 258 was just, it's now normal.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think that it's true. Like, I don't feel like I'm more mentally capable than I was in first year. Like my brain's, I know it's still probably growing a little bit, but I don't feel mind-blowingly smarter. It's like when I was 14 and I was 8, I've obviously felt much smarter than between now and when finishing school. But being in first year, I would never been able to imagine that I'm in the courses I am in now, kind of, because the kind of level of difficulty, it's obviously increased, but my ability to management, it's like you said, it's a lot easier now for me.
Yeah, no, it's I think our friend Jake put it in good words. Said just kind of go with it. You're like, all right, this is the difficulty, and I'm just gonna go with it from now on.
Yeah,
like it just is what it is.
And I mean, yeah, I think that's one of the challenging things is that your perspective on what's tough and what's difficult to manage changes over time. And the only way it changes is by experiencing things like those rough periods where, you're not sure how you're going to make it through.
Yeah.
I mean, those, we could have a long talk about all the different things that you need to think about when it comes to getting through those rough periods, like finding sources of support, talking to people about how you can approach this in a way that can help solve your problem in, the ways that your old techniques were not. But also some of it is just remembering that, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That I think about things, and even the worst parts of the term, I think, in a few months, this term will all be done. And
it'll be summer.
It'll be holiday. Yeah, it'll be like the winter holidays. And okay, there's going to be another course, but even that's going to be done. I'll have the summer holidays and then things. And so it's always knowing that, at some point everything that you're going through right now will be part of your past that you remember. And it's just a matter of, just getting through it so that you can become stronger for it. And what's really tough is that, some of the things that people consider hardships now are actually things that people will look back and wish they could do again.
Yeah.
So many people, they graduate and they miss school so much because they love the chance now to be able to go back and do an assignment, because it would be kind of fun to be given these little challenges that don't necessarily have to, they're not going to get you fired if you don't do it right.
Yeah.
It's fun to have only 5 hours of sleep. And,
they sometimes they think, it's kind of fun. I miss that.
It kind of definitely I think it's fun when you're out of it, but when you're going through, you're like, I just want this to be over with. But as soon as you're done, you're like, yeah, I guess there's a little bit of fun in there.
Yeah, it's like working out, or it's like running a marathon, right? I mean, who runs a marathon because, oh wow, this is great? It's like, I think it's almost the feeling of after you're done the marathon, like the sense of achievement.
Yeah,
100%.
But yeah, everyone's going to go through some really tough stuff in life, and I guess as you get older, you just kind of, the things that you go through end up becoming, a lot rougher than you imagine. But then it helps you deal with all the things that you would think are impossible to deal with right now, like that work-life balance that seems impossible. You find ways of making it work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know, it's Friday, right? It's Friday at 3:15 where we are. After this, I go home, and I'm sure I've got a million emails in my inbox. Anyone who's trying to reach me tonight is not going to hear from me until tomorrow, because I give myself that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going home. I'm going to play some video games because I haven't played anything in a month. And I am going to do me stuff.
I've got to go home. I've got 4 midterms next week, so. But then next week, that Friday. Oh yeah.
One tip I was told is that you maintain a schedule. Just to make sure you're working on everything. You get enough time set aside to work on this project, this assignment. But you set some time aside for you to do something for yourself, and that is sacred as much as any meeting or any other midterm or obligation.
100%.
Yeah, because you basically say, you know what, you guys are going to be 100% busy all the time anyway. You might as well have some say in what you're busy with, right? So join a club, go on a date.
Run a podcast.
Run a podcast.
You got to do some things that are for yourself as opposed to just for other people.
All right, I think with that, we'll end the show. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you so much for being on, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Glad to be here. Everyone who has watched or who is listening, I'm glad you could come join us. Make good choices.
Yeah. All right. Until next episode.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.